and welcome to Two Nursery Managers Talking. My name's Glenn.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're both managers in the PVI sector.
And this week we are going to discuss budgeting.
Ooh, budgeting and finance. Oh, now, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is. And I think the first thing that I discovered running a nursery was that it's not really the education sector anymore. Suddenly, you're becoming an accountant.
Yeah.
And you're learning things about Excel sheets that you thought you'd never need with a teaching degree. So I think a lot of managers find themselves looking at things that they never really prepared themselves for before they became a manager.
I think as well, like you were saying that, and you are 100% right. Look at me doing like numbers and but I think that's why as well Ofsted have now come in that managers require like at least functional skills. That's what I've got to do at the moment because, quite frankly, I don't have any GCSEs. I know. I have a degree, but I have no GCSEs.
Yeah. Do you know, I hadn't thought of it like that before.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That has to be one of the main reasons why, is because, like you say, we are now becoming, like, we're not educators anymore. We're business people. We're having to look at spreadsheets and understand them.
Yeah. And I think the other big challenge that I wrestle with is I want to be an educator. I want to do what's best for the children. Mm-hmm. But we're in the PVI sector. We are running a business where you actually have to look at the bottom line, which is I just want to say, yes, come in. We hardly want to charge you any money. We really want to educate your children. And that is not possible because you also want to pay your staff.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? You know, people want paid for things. I'd be slight sarcasm there, but no, obviously, you want to pay the staff the best and that. And you do have to really go into minute detail. Every penny you get in has to be scrutinised and filed away in the right place. Yeah. Because there's all kinds of bills coming up, and then there's bills that you're not expecting coming up, and that really knocks your budget.
Yeah. Oh, the door handles come off. Good.
Okay. Great. Well, I don't think a roll of sellotape's going to fix that one.
Yeah. And I think we've had a conversation today about, we really want to get these things and these things and these things. Like, I would love to buy all that for you too. Or I've just spent all of this money and you've lost it. That's quite heartbreaking because you're so aware of the tiny balances that you're having to do all the time in order to make it a fantastic place for children, make it a place where the staff feel they've got everything that they need in order to make it for a fantastic place. And it's hard work.
It is tricky. It's that bit as well. Like, there's an element of understanding if you're talking about, purchasing expensive resources, because let's face it, everything, when you say it's for nursery or for education or for early years, it comes with a premium.
Oh, it's really so unfair.
It really is. Like, I mean, if you go shopping at any of the major educational suppliers, I'm not going to mention names.
No.
Quite frankly, because I'll get into so much trouble. But they do whack a bit of a premium on. And you end up as well, that's the other bit in terms of finance and budgeting. You end up having to shop around. And it's mind-blowing.
But then that's adding to your time as well. Mm-hmm. And you end up spinning so many different plates and worrying about, is the funding going to cover it? Is the funding rate going to go up? We haven't even touched on what's going to happen in April with minimum wage increases and national insurance. Those things, at a stroke of a pen, just throw everything up in the air and you always have to start again.
Yeah.
Which is really hard when, again, you want to be concentrating on delivering an excellent learning experience and focusing the curriculum and training the staff and providing money to train the staff as well.
Yeah, because that's another bit as well, is like you want to be able to have highly trained, highly specialised staff who can do all
expertise.
Kinds of... Yes, the expertise that can do all kinds of things, and yet that costs as well, like training costs. And, you'll remember the days when there was all kinds of training courses put on by local, and those budgets have been shrunk and non-existent now.
And you want to reward your staff for the degree level they've reached or for the expertise they've got. You want to retain your staff because of that as well. But you can't afford to go very much above the minimum wage in this sector, because otherwise the parents can't afford to pay the rates. And again, it's everything is squeezing and squeezing.
Mm. I know. It's the difficult bit as well, because you were talking about, I was on a webinar recently from Early Years Alliance, and they were looking at the funding rates. And I know that they've been given an injection of cash, but there was a bit I really wasn't aware of, and this is where kind of like my business brain is now having to switch over to this. Is like, there's sort of a minimum of, I think it's 94% of that rate has to come to us. It's now going up to 96%. Yeah. But there's part of me thinking, well, why isn't it 100%? Yeah.
So everything that we used to get, all the training and all the early years inclusion advisors and all the other things, was paid by that section.
That little 6
and 4, so and so as that money has shrunk, the money that they've had for all of that provision, the SEN provision, I think comes out of it as well for early years. So they're getting fewer and fewer. I know in our local authority, the number of people that are available to support us is getting fewer and fewer. But that they're having to squeeze their budget in order to do what they can to support us. I think our local authority is really good at providing what they can, but I think they do it on very little, like everybody else.
They do. I mean, I know our local authority that I work with, they do put on vast amounts of training, but some of it comes with a fee, which before, we remember the halcyon days when it was all free, which is great. But in a way, that's not a bad idea. Because I think, if you're booking that course and you're paying for it with your budget, you're committed to it. Yeah. Whereas I think probably in those days where everything was free, everybody would just drop out. It's like, I can't make it. Well, it doesn't matter. It didn't cost me anything.
I think I've got increasingly creative. I've developed a nursery Padlet for training.
Ooh, hello.
So, we now have a laptop that we use for staff CPD time. So I give them the laptop and there's a tree icon in the middle of the desktop. Click on that, takes them straight to the Padlet, and then that's got links to all sorts of free bits of CPD. So every time I find a bit, add it in.
Do you know, I'm going to have to ask you to share the log at some point. That is great. It's funny you were talking about, I've never heard of Padlets until recently.
Oh, well, I hadn't until recently, but I feel so delighted whenever anyone says, I need to know more about this Padlet. And I've put it all in columns. One for play, one for nurture, one for communication.
I feel this could be a little background project.
Yeah. But it's made it so much more straightforward for me, because I'm forever... there was a thing that I saw, and where was it? And now there's a YouTube clip here. There's an article here. There's a webinar that you... So it's all in one place.
As well.
But it's, and it doesn't take up too much of my time, because whenever I find something else, I just add it in quick.
Yeah.
And then it's there all the time.
It's the initial setup.
Zero cost.
Yeah.
On a daily basis for us. So,
Now there you go, a top budget tip.
Yeah, that's really helped.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment we're members of Early Years Alliance, so we get access to all their training, which is fine. I mean, the membership is, I'm not going to say it's expensive, because it's not, because we get our insurance and everything with it. But it's one of those bits, it's like trying to tap into what we've got and what's around us. There are training providers as well, but they do come at a cost as well. And that's, I like that. Thanks for
the other thing, I do pay for training sometimes. But I always make the staff write about it afterwards and have a little bit of dissemination and summary and share it in the staff meeting so that we're getting real bang for our buck. Even if it's £10 that I've paid, it needs to be worthwhile so that it makes an impact.
It's making your pound stretch further because they're bringing that information back. There's like you say, disseminating it to the other staff, and it's becoming embedded, and it's not just click and forget training, or it's not just a one-off webinar that they've gone, okay, that's nice. There's a sense of responsibility that they've got to really pay attention to this and bring it back.
But it's not just the cost of paying for them to go to the course or do the online session, which you can pay for. Some of them are, £10 not too bad for little bits and pieces. But you're also covering them to do that work on an hour by hour rate, well, they're not in front of the children. And every hour that you're paying a staff member to not be in a room with children is to the benefit of the collective, but on an hourly rate, it's adding to your pressures as well.
So that £10 has suddenly gone up and up and up. Yeah, no, it's difficult. I think as well, the other bit for me, I do, like on a personal level, I struggle understanding balance sheets. I can't, they literally do not make sense to me. So I'm lucky I've got somebody else that does that for me and just keeps me in the loop and explains it to me in words that I can understand. Previous setting I was at, I was lucky our finance person,
you had a few settings within your group, didn't you? Yeah.
And so we had a finance person there, and she kind of managed all our spreadsheets for each setting and, incomes and outcomes and everything, which was great because she explained it to me. There's a joke that we had between us. We sat there at a full team, senior team meeting, and chief exec was doing a presentation about finance and numbers, and I'm going, and our finance person was sat next to me, nudged me in the ribs and went, I'll explain it to you tomorrow. But it's that bit that it's finding ways that you understand. It doesn't necessarily have to be, the big spreadsheet and, understanding that, because I personally can't do that. And it is difficult. And, again, this is probably why I don't have a GCSE in maths. But it is important to keep track of everything, because you've got to know where you are financially, are you financially stable? Do those fees need to go up because have you got other costs coming in that aren't being met by fees coming in? Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah. So we've had to make the decision to put our prices up as of April.
Yeah.
And we've written to parents and explained. And I think explaining all of the ins and outs, not giving them the spreadsheet, but saying our food costs have gone up by this much, our wage bill has gone up by this much, we're paying this much more for heating, we want to maintain a quality provision, therefore we're spending, money on all these things. And this is why we're having to put our fees up. And actually all the response we had from parents was, we get it, we understand.
Yeah.
So I think being open about all of that, especially when you're looking at funding and the consumables that you're having to charge for, being as straightforward and open as possible. This is how I'm spending those pounds that you're giving me.
I think that's the bit. It's like, we talked about it at the start there, that we're looking for value for money when we're making purchases. If you think about it from the perspective of the parents, they're making a purchase by buying our service.
Yeah.
So, you have to be honest and open and say, well, you understand as well as we do that things are going up, the cost of energy's going up, the cost of food's going up, everything. Yeah. And it is having that open, honest conversation. It's like, we're not just putting the fees up because we feel like it.
But they also want to feel that they're getting a really quality service for the money, because some families, a huge percentage of their family income is going on childcare. Yeah. They want to know that their child is safe, well looked after, thriving, enjoying their time. So sharing that side of it as well, and being open about everything that goes on, and letting them see what they're getting and what the nursery is like, and inviting them in or sending them newsletters, or all of that helps them to understand what we do, why we do it, and why we spend the money on what we do spend the money on.
It's that sort of the nursery community again. I know we've talked about that in previous podcasts. It is, if you've got the parents on board with your nursery community and they're part of it, then they will understand. Everything, for every family is going up. And it can be tough for a lot of families, but again, it's like you say, it's that open, honest conversation.
We do what we can as well. We have a swap shop for families, so baby toys, clothes they've grown out of. We've got a cupboard of resources, and we've got a wardrobe with little hangers of. So if you've got some wellies that your child has grown out of, you can leave them for the next person. Puddle suits, coats. So there's that side of things. We've got a lending library as well. There's another free access thing, which parents then put a few books that their children have grown out of, which it sort of helps and builds that community. And we have a lot of parents say, "Oh, I'm having a moving house. I've got this rug. Do you want it?"
Yes.
Often it's always yes. We've had occasionally recently we've said no because we've said yes so much that we have to.
Do you know, I've done that as well recently. I'm like, we have to stop. We've got way too much stuff here. We need to get rid of some of this. But yeah, it is that bit as well. And families that are engaged with you are more likely to support you. So again, that has a positive impact on your budget as well, because if they are bringing things in like rugs or whatever, then great, because that's something you then don't have to buy. If it's something you've needed, you don't need to buy it. So.
And we love curious objects and all sorts of different bits and pieces. So I've got some tea sets. Oh yes, we'll have all the cups and saucers you can spare.
I'm laughing. It's like, yes, please, plenty of cups and saucers. Yeah. But I know it's a tricky one as well, and like you say as well, it's like some settings as well, they want to be able to pay a good wage to their staff. Particularly if they've gone all the way and they've got their qualifications and everything else, and that's a tightrope that you're having to walk, is between giving them a really good wage but also staying within that budget as well.
Yeah, and it's such an unequal situation between what teachers are, educators are in a school, and how educators are in the nursery PVI sector.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be in this sector unless you love it, because no one's in it for the money.
No.
And if you can reward people enough to feel that they are being recognised and getting that job satisfaction in order to stay, that makes all the difference. You've got a happy workforce that are committed to your nursery and the children, but that's really difficult when everything's getting squeezed more.
Yeah, particularly when you have things like things that are out of your control. So things like national insurance and the minimum wage going up. That's again. It's things like that are out with your control, and it makes you have to sit down and look at your budgets all over again and go, can we actually afford this? Can we afford the amount of staff that we've got? Can we? There's a lot of questions, and that's why a lot of settings have gone under, because they just can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, when we found out the national insurance and the minimum wage was changing in April, we had to really look at every part of how much everything was costing, what we're spending on food, what we're spending on resources, heating, insurance, the full range, plus staffing, which is 80% of our budget. And then see, okay, so what is the hourly rate that we need to stay functioning? What is the hourly rate we're getting in funding?
Sorry.
And then where are the gaps? And therefore, what do we need in order to make those gaps function? How much is it going to cost us?
What do we need to close that gap?
In food and consumables that we're not getting covered by the money that we've got coming in. It's a really difficult thing to balance, and to somebody who's not got that training or experience of being an accountant. But then I think there's more help out there. I think our local authority's got a couple of sessions coming up to support business development, and I think the Early Years Alliance have done some bits about it as well.
They're doing a lot more. They're promoting a lot more, which is really, really useful, because it is becoming more. You have to be more business minded, I think, is kind of.
I think the settings that I know of that have struggled are the ones that are predominantly sort of 9 to 3 funding only.
Your traditional playgroups,
and because they don't have income coming from anything beyond the funding, they just haven't been able to stretch it, and it's just fallen apart.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I think. Well, with my current setting, that's what we were. But obviously, we've converted now, and we're now a full wraparound daycare. So we are having to look at things completely differently, which is why we have somebody employed that looks at the business side of things, and is constantly constantly crunching numbers, constantly looking at the funding, constantly looking at fees.
And are they an early years practitioner who's they're still doing both. Two hats?
They wear two hats, yes, because let's face it, I mean, how many hats do we wear when you're managing?
Heavens.
A lot of hats. I mean, I think it is difficult when you kind of like having to switch your head when you've worked for so long as a practitioner or whatever, and you've not really come into contact with that. You really do have to get your sort of business mind into it, and I think I've had to learn that very, very quickly.
Yeah. And I think you become hardened to it the more you do it, and you go, okay, I need this to come in to this amount, otherwise actually my job, my colleagues' jobs, the children's place, it all will crumble.
Yeah.
Whereas you go into education for your heart, really, don't you?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've all gone into it because this is what we want to do. We want to make a difference to the children, and I think we have to kind of keep that in our head. It's like, yes, I'm crunching these numbers, however, I'm doing it because
for the benefit
of the children, the benefit of the children, to give them an excellent learning environment. And I suppose it's kind of looking at it from a different perspective. Yes, you could be a hardened business person coming in and going to crunch all those numbers and make everything work, but actually you still need to bear in mind that it's not about creating profit, because let's face it, profit? Really? You'll be lucky. It's about creating that really good, solid, exciting learning environment.
Viable would be the key word, isn't it? You want it to be a brilliant learning environment this year and also next year and the year after that.
Yeah, viable. Yes, that is exactly the word. It's got to be, and I think if you're not prepared to do that, this is going back many, many years, but I remember talking to this lady. I'd not long moved to the area, and this lady had started a day nursery, and in fact, I think it was featured. I mean, we're talking about 30 odd years ago.
No.
She started a day nursery, and it got featured in Nursery World. But Nursery World were running these articles on nurseries that have succeeded and nurseries that haven't, and she was the featured person in the nursery that failed. But she went into it purely with the heart, not the head.
Yeah.
And I went for a visit because this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with children. So I went to go and see if I could, be part of it. And she was like, we really can't afford to take it. There was literally her and one other person. That's all they could afford.
And then because of that, you end up working ridiculously long hour days, not looking after yourself, trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And then because it's too difficult to juggle all those balls, that's not going to work out either.
Yeah. I'm going to confess, I made, in my early days as a manager, I made a very big faux pas. I made a huge error. I made a big budgeting blunder because I didn't know. I didn't know any better. A member of the team left, as they do, and I needed to replace them. But obviously, I needed to fill the gap in the meantime, because working for a small group, I had to get permission first to recruit. Couldn't just put the advert out. I didn't have the.
Did you phone up agencies?
I got our agent. Well, there was one agency in the area. I got them in and basically covered all the hours. And I'm like, oops, it cost me double what we were paying the practitioner that had left.
Yeah. And
I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I should have done a bit of agency and a bit of me.
But that's so hard to do because are you going to have a sort of surplus internally so that you've got a play worker who can cover training, meetings, sickness, holidays, and have them in which case some of the time you might be paying them when you might not need them? Or are you going to be absolutely down to the knuckle and then rely on supply agency when you've got...
So we had a similar issue to one that you had, in that a nearby nursery had closed, and we had a huge influx of children, and we were full. We went from being half full to full.
Well, in that, my heart moment of that was the absolute horror and shell shock and panic of the parents who were coming and just going, I've got no childcare, help me. And you just want to say, yes, of course we'll help.
Yeah. So we were we were kind of rigid about this. And again, it wasn't just solely my decision. We had a small team that came together very, very quickly. Said, right, okay, we can offer these. Our finance person with a lovely spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet I actually understood, which was marvellous. But it was like offering them spaces and that. And it's like, it wasn't that we were cherry picking, but it was playing jigsaws and trying to fit the right people into the right spaces whilst kind of building us up. So we were fully staffed, but then obviously when that practitioner left, it dropped us down. Yeah. And I'm like, I need to fill that gap. But then because I overspent, because it was a rookie error. Yeah. I own it. I own that rookie error. I had to then cover it because I then got recruitment was then paused. I'm like, well, actually, that's going to cost us more in my time and everything else. So it did, and in the end, we were allowed to recruit. Yeah. So, but it was like that's really putting pressure on us. Yeah. Nobody's actually said, well, what happened? Yeah. Well, what happened was I didn't realise that's not what you do. Yeah. Nobody had told me that one.
But then also, you don't always have that choice. If you have a staff member who is suddenly absent or leaves, and you're a whole full-time staff member down, your only option might be the supply agency.
That was the problem. She was a full-time member.
In which case you're looking at, well, can I afford to keep paying this agency fees, or am I going to have to reduce the numbers? And then you're on a sort of cycle of, can I keep the place open while I try and recruit? Have I got enough money to keep the surplus going to keep the supply agency staff in?
So in the end, I didn't have to, but what I did was I put myself in ratio some points, supply in for other points, and then I used staff who wanted to do a bit of overtime to cover other points for the day. Yeah. So
we do that when we have, quite a lot of flu around.
Yes.
Anyone want to work a few extra hours? But then that's not a long-term plan, because I've done that and I've been in rooms too much when I've got spreadsheets to check and all the other things going on in the office that don't stop just because you're not there to attend to them. So it's a balancing your own well-being, staff well-being, children's well-being, as well as the finances.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the finances are they take up a lot, but they are also necessary.
Well, you want them to just be background noise. You want it to just be, okay, we've looked at everything, we've got these plans, this is going to keep us going. If we have some contingency issues, we've still got these little bits. Okay, fine, close that. Now get back to the rest of it.
Yeah,
you hope.
Fingers crossed. But the other thing, I think I touched on it earlier, was you do become quite adept at shopping around things. I get it, you get it, that we get practitioners come out and say, oh, we'd really like this. I mean, I've had this today, somebody wanting new set of tables and chairs. I'm like,
yeah. Have you looked on Facebook Marketplace?
Oh, don't you worry, I'll be there. But yeah, it's that bit. But we do.
It doesn't need to come definitely from an early years supplier.
No.
Have you considered second hand? Are there other options? We're always looking for solving a problem sideways rather than going straight to the easy spend and getting the lovely glossy catalogue out.
Oh, the days when you could just go for the glossy catalogue. But you're right, it's that bit. It's like you're not penny pinching, but you are penny pinching, but in the positive sense that you're having to make every penny count.
But then sometimes that's enriching. So we have our same favourite second-hand shop, shed, warehouse. And now and again, now and again, they have a fill your bag for £1 day.
Oh, sorry, I've done.
And the things you can put in your bag and come away with are just amazing.
They're
and there's
wonderful.
some really strange things like I don't even know what they're called, the ends of curtain poles.
Oh, yeah, the finials.
Finials, that's the one. Or some random brass pots and just all sorts.
And teapots.
Obviously teapots.
I love a teapot.
And all the cups and saucers. But then you come away with things that the children just go, oh, that's interesting. Because it's not what they normally have as their toys at home, and it's different. And the fact that it might be that teapot doesn't last more than a couple of weeks, and you can practice and you can talk to them about keeping things safe, but eventually a child will forget that. But you just think, well, it was part of a bag that I spent £1 on.
Yeah.
That's okay. Rather than getting the catalogue out and getting amazing things, which they might see, their toys at home might be similar to what you find in the catalogue.
It is enriching, like, we've used that word enriching.
Yeah.
But again, you're making £1 go a lot further.
Yeah.
But actually you're giving something that's much more enriching because you're igniting that curiosity in the child. So yes, you've saved quite a bit of money by not shopping in that shiny catalogue and buying a bag full of stuff. But really, what experiences you've given to the children is like priceless.
Yeah, we have some go-kart wheels. We're so excited.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
And they, in the room now, about indoor use of wheels for building motorbikes and
nice.
Just general things. They put cushion on the top and it's a little stool. Yeah. And that's so different, isn't it? That's not what they normally see. So they're instantly interested, and you can sit there and go, well, what could this be? We could have it like this, or we could do this with it. Or...
Again, that's kind of the experiences you should be getting at nursery.
Yeah.
Rather than, well, at home, they've got all these toys, traditional toys.
Yes.
At nursery, they've got things that they can explore and play about with.
Which just brings us back round to we're offering parents a quality for their child that's different, that's interesting, that's enriching them and stimulating them. And if we can communicate that this is what we do and how we do it, and they can see what they're getting for the money that they're having to make a choice. I mean, there's a choice of, do I go back to work and do I pay for childcare? I have to go back to work. How much childcare can I get away with scratching with, asking favours and,
grandparents.
Yes, grandparents. there's all those little choices that parents are making as well in order to make their budgets work, as well as helping us to keep our budgets working.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, time has crept up on us really, really quickly.
That was quick.
It was. But Sarah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.